Barshens is brought to you by our awesome patrons. Thanks for supporting the channel.
Can you do your Flow Rider impression again? It was so good.
I can if I'm honest. Welsh National Treasure Flow Rider. Up there with Bassy, up there with Tom Jones, resident of Chepstow, loves a bit of rarebit and throwing down some beats.
In that order. Yes.
That was so good.
Barshens!
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Barshens. Did you hear that?
I did.
It was sort of
What was that? Was that the hip-hop remix of the Sharticles thing?
For those of you that don't know, we do the shoot. We're very high-tech. We're playing the tune off my phone. It kind of went up.
I've just realised we always dub it, though, for the actual edit, so they won't hear it.
Oh, right, yeah, okay. So just pretend like Will Smith going wiki wiki wow wow in the middle of it. Today, we are joined, Stuart. Would you like to introduce your local friend?
Certainly. This is Mr. Alec Plowman.
Hello, Stuart's local friend at your service.
My friendly neighbourhood ploughman.
AKA
Whoa! Bloody hell. I thought it was under attack then for a second.
AKA the cheeseboard.
Yeah, I still have some feelings about that nickname.
See, that was going to be one of the initial podcasts that we did to follow on.
Yeah.
There's a story about that. We did do that podcast.
We did, because Alec is indeed the sound recordist for the podcast. And we brought him on early and we had a really nice chat. And one of the cameras, being a YouTube space one, it was like their super expensive camera, compact flash card, and it died, and we lost all the footage.
Yeah, so this is not my first time on the Barshens rodeo.
No, we need to remember the funniest things we asked you.
Yeah. It's basically the greatest podcast ever, but I've enhanced it with a quiz, which we'll come to. But for people that don't know you, Alec, I mean, you're from Norwich?
Well, I'm originally from Wales.
Are you?
I am indeed. But I am Norwich resident. I am, when I am not podcast editing, sound editing man, I am a freelance journalist, and I have a PhD in rock music, which means I'm technically a doctor of rock.
So we could have called him Dr. Rock, but instead we've called him
the cheeseboard. Because of the Plowman's thing. It just makes so much sense.
I love, the promise that I would be taken seriously. I gave on Barshens. It's like, oh yeah, we really respect you and what you do, but
sit in the corner, sound goblin.
Yeah. How do you feel about being a cheeseboard? Well,
we were going to get, like, I would show you a picture of Stuart. There's, I can get these foam wedge cheese hats. We're going to get you to wear one. It kind of become a thing. We could start selling them, on
Barshens branded cheese hats.
Wow.
Cheese hats.
So they would sell, like, I was going to say hot cakes, but hot cheese?
Camembert?
Yeah, that'd do it.
Brilliant. Yeah.
Oh, tread carefully. Right.
Oh, going to be Caffeine.
Caffeine, yeah, I didn't pronounce it wrong. It didn't work that one.
Belated buns are the best buns.
Which part of Wales were you from then?
South Wales, so Abergavenny.
Abergavenny, that's lovely, that is. Yeah. Oh, yeah, I don't know if I can see Abergavenny from where I live, but should we have a sharticle?
Let's begin with a sharticle to break any remaining ice.
Start with the shart.
And today, from everybody's favourite newspaper, the Palm Beach Post.
The Palm Beach Post?
Another Florida one.
Yeah, another Florida one. Yeah, it's Florida Man, another Florida Man story.
Have you ever been to Florida?
No. I've been to Flo Rider's house.
Have you really?
Yeah, he lives in Chepstow.
I've got a suspicion of Flo Rider living in Chepstow.
Yeah, well, at least he told me he was Flo Rider.
Like a goat farmer or something in Chepstow. I haven't... Yeah. Oh, he's from Chepstow. Chepstow's in Wales, isn't it? Just over the bridge?
No, I don't think
it is.
Edge? No,
I do not know.
I think Chepstow's just on the nipple of Wales. On the teeth.
I thought it was more central. I'm going to have to look it up now.
That's what it says on the sign, on the nipple of Wales.
Pretty certain I live right by it, if I'm honest.
I'm going to have a look.
Chepstow, like, you go over the Severn Bridge, I think it's just there. It's literally the edge of, like, Mordor.
You must... Are you referring to Wales as Mordor?
No, I'm half Welsh, actually. My dad was born in Swansea. Does that make me quarter Welsh? No, makes
something
me half
like
Welsh.
that. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Chepstow isn't. Well, I never knew that.
Yeah.
And I have brought shame to my to my nation by not knowing that either.
And
So,
who
sorry,
knew
guys.
that Flo Rida lived in Chepstow?
Oh, yeah.
Where does this come from?
You should nip over.
Yeah. What did he sing, Flo Rida?
I've got absolutely no idea.
Apple bottom jeans, boots with
No,
the fur?
we don't. He doesn't like
Yeah.
to talk music.
It doesn't.
No.
He's just into like talking about.
All we talk about is Back to the Future. Actually, you
Oh,
should
really?
come. Yeah,
Just farming and rural life.
yeah, in general. And he really likes quoits. That game you play on the decks of ships. Yeah, he's really into quoits.
That sounds like a disease.
Yeah.
Oh, I've got quoits.
Or maybe it is.
What is
That would push our chat into a different meaning.
me up enough again, Stuart.
Is that how Flo Rida speaks?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah,
When he
since the
sings.
accident. Yes.
Yeah. He's like pow pow when he's singing, but then he's like, oh, you're what's quoits? Quoits
in the knees.
Is quoits like shuffleboard then?
No, it's like you throwing like hoops over something. I can't remember.
I like that you're looking at me as if I'm going to give
I was
you the
just
answer to
really
this.
hoping you knew, but
Yeah.
apparently not.
Throwing
no.
hoops overboard on
Yeah,
the
it's
fit.
traditionally played on the deck of a ship. Columbo plays it in one episode.
Oh, really? Okay.
Which that's a reference.
Columbo.
What? Wow.
I wonder if Columbo ever did wash that coat as well.
Definitely not.
Yeah.
He used the musk from it to hypnotise
Musk.
criminals.
It does come across as a very musky coat. It has that look, doesn't it? You know, look at something that's got a certain stench. Columbo's coat.
That's a
should have
fragrance
musk.
from Jean-Paul Gaultier. Columbo's coat.
I mean, the new advertising. He's still alive, isn't he?
Who's that?
Columbo?
No,
Peter
Peter
Falk's
Falk's been dead for several years.
Oh,
yeah.
right.
I think he had dementia. Poor
Well,
bugger,
he's
and
lasted
died,
longer
yeah.
than Guy Fawkes, so.
Save me, Sharticle. So, the police say stolen rare coins ended up in change machines.
Stolen rare coins.
Ended up in change machines, yep. Authorities say a Florida man stole collectible coins worth tens of thousands of dollars, then ran them through grocery store change machines that returned just a fraction of their value.
Oh,
Presumably
wow.
because he wasn't aware that they were rare coins.
I would have thought so, yes. He just nicked them. It's like, oh, coins, I'll stick them in the coin star. It was literally a coin star. And, yeah,
like the
probably
world-
didn't end too well.
Yeah. Like the world's worst pirate, then, really. You know, like I know that it's a little bit modern to say a pirate goes and gets his coins and takes them to a coin star machine or whatever, but you know,
Yar, where's me booty?
He didn't really check.
I be wanting store credit.
Yeah, when we nicked your card, then other supermarkets are available.
Is that Flow Rider again?
Yeah, Flow Rider. Yeah, it's like a game of Cluedo. Flow Rider with the rubbish coins in Tesco's. Wow. So you didn't realise
God.
that they were like actual like artifact kind of coins?
No, he was not a bright man, apparently. The Palm Beach Post reported 20-year-old Shane Anthony Melee of Riviera Beach told investigators he stole the commemorative presidential dollar coins and other items from a North Palm Beach office in December. The coins were worth $33,000.
Wow.
County Sheriff's Office report says Melee sold the coins for a few $1,000s and he ran many through change machines that only produced their face value. He was charged with grand theft along with unrelated drug charges. He was released February the 4th after posting bond. Jail's records didn't show whether he had an attorney. I don't know what relevancy that has, but there we are.
So how much did he get? Sorry?
A few thousand.
2,000.
Yes, he probably
So-
lost off on like $29,000.
That is incredible. But he must have thought, oh, I've done well here. Like,
How much of this is to do with him not knowing what they are, or how difficult it is to sell hot antique
this could be it.
coins?
He couldn't get a fence.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like the time I stole the crown jewels and took them to CEX. You know?
Yeah.
It's just...
Swapped it for a NES controller.
yeah. Shit. Were you in there? I did get that amiibo of Gold Mario as well, though. So, you know.
What's an amiibo?
It's like a little Nintendo character statue thing.
Like a little bobblehead thing.
Yeah, pretty much.
Did they try and haggle on the condition because they were slightly scuffed?
No, they
were like,
immediately said it was B. Everything's B. That's the CX rule. I once took in an iPhone to sell, and they gave me a B because there was some fluff in the microphone.
Oh, it gets everywhere, that
or
does,
the
doesn't it?
headphone port. So what I did was, wait for it, I removed the fluff from the headphone port, and then it was nay.
Wow.
So it took for you to procure a Q-tip and accordingly.
Oh, just a little puff on it. Puff
Yeah.
Magic Dragon.
Yeah.
Yeah, I went to is it the Genius store? And they try and sort all that out.
man.
So I was getting these things where, you know, we do sort of Instagram stories and the microphone is actually on some of the new iPhones. They have like the microphone and the camera. Is there two separate ones?
Yeah.
So when I was doing some of them, I was getting messages back of people going, out in big letters. I was like, what is that? And it's because it was just basically emitting white noise because of the dust, the build up in there.
Wow.
To be honest, it's probably plain flour. Because I get quite excited when we're doing my videos. I do Instagram story. I put flour in a bowl and then chuck a bit there, and it gets proper gunked up, that stuff. So
You can't find a wooden spoon anywhere. Just
just use your iPhone. Yeah, it makes it. Yeah,
I'll lift it in the oven again.
attachment.
I'll be fine.
Yeah.
Put some water to cool it down.
Makes an amazing attachment.
I hate the apples. It's like a cross between an airport waiting room and a laboratory, isn't it? It's just something creepy about these apple stores.
Yes.
I don't know.
No, I get that.
Yeah.
Yeah, because there's people just sort of lingering about there as if they're waiting for a flight, but they're not. They're just kind of charging their phone or something. Why do they have all these things there? Is that for people just to? I've never hung out there. I've gone in. I've got my genius knowledge. Gone, done. Why are they called geniuses?
It's that thing where it's like an attempt to create this space where you can come and hang out and immerse yourself in our products. It's like, but you are a shop.
Yes.
We would like to,
Yeah, that's it. Do you want to buy something?
Why not come and sit at our genius bar? And it's like, well, I just wanted a charger, mate.
Yeah, that's right.
And have you bought something from there?
Expensive, isn't it? Yeah.
Not only that, but you don't go to like a person and pay. You're supposed to pay for it using an app on your phone and just walk out with it.
Oh, right.
Which really threw me last time. The blokes look at me like, what? You want to eat a dead donkey that's all rotten? I'm like, no, I just want to pay. It's the same thing, mate, paying with a card.
Really?
Ugh. Yeah.
Hashtag spawn.
Yeah. Anyway, over to our new sponsors, Android.
Yeah, it's expensive. I remember going in there and like a phone case was like 3 or 4 times the price that you can get from a little market store. But you pretty much pay with your pancreas or something.
But you're paying for the experience.
Yeah, that's it. The genius.
Experience of
I would
being
pay money to not have that experience.
Yeah.
You get accosted by a certified genius.
That's right. Yeah. Speaking of certified genius, so you do have a PhD in rock.
I do indeed have a PhD in rock music.
That is not why you are wearing earmuffs, is it?
No, I'm currently monitoring the sound.
That's why we bring in Barry.
Oh, right, yeah. I suddenly thought my ears are very exposed. Like, right.
I did think it was a strange request. Can you find me somebody who has a PhD in rock music and have him sit in the corner doing nothing?
just twist some knobs and stuff like that.
Yeah.
That sounded rock. So, what is a PhD in rock then? How do you even get that?
Yeah, so it's there's a process behind attaining a PhD in rock music.
Okay.
Basically, I did my degree at the University of East Anglia in film and television studies.
That's at Norwich.
It's in Norwich, yeah.
Yes, I think
Local.
I've driven past that at 3 a.m.
Yeah.
trying to find a hotel.
Yeah. Like all the best visits to Norwich.
Yeah, it was amazing.
Yeah, I remember that.
What a day.
Yeah. So yeah, I did my undergraduate degree at the University of East Anglia in film and television, but I've always had an interest in rock music since basically whenever. I play in bands. I've been very involved in live music and local music and all of that stuff basically since I could. So I was doing an undergraduate degree in film and television studies, but I always had this interest in rock music. And I found as I went through my undergraduate degree and I was getting more free choice about what I could write about, that I was writing more and more about concert movies, because that allowed me to bridge my two interests. So my interest in film and television, my interest in rock music, well, live rock music movies is the thing that I started to do essays on. That started to go quite well. And then I realized to myself, well, I could maybe do more of this. So I did a master's and I was able to have more free choice to do that. And then at the end of my master's, I decided I wanted to do a PhD, and I decided to do it on the history of live recordings in rock music. So I submitted a proposal for that, went through all of the channels, and it got accepted, and I was funded by the Arts and Humanities Research Council. They decided that they would fund my 4-year, 3-4 year, whatever it was, project. And then I did a PhD on the history of live recordings in the 1960s and 70s.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah.
And that's why there's such audience whooping when you mix Barshens.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like having a live audience to a certain degree.
Yeah. All the canned noise that I put in.
What is rock music then? Define rock music to me, because is rock, Spice Girls obviously isn't rock music. Is Queen rock music?
Yeah. So guitar-based music, essentially, guitar-based popular music is rock music. Rock music's such a broad church that it's kind of difficult to pin down exactly what it is and isn't these days. But generally, when you're talking about rock music, so in the 1950s, you had rock and roll music.
Yeah.
So guys like Elvis Presley and Chuck Berry and Little Richard, and you've probably got
Flow Rider.
Yeah, Flow Rider. You've probably got
All Chepstow-based artists.
yeah, you know, the Chepstow music scene that originated all
The
of
birth
these.
of rock was Chepstow.
And then, so you had that in the 1950s, that's kind of the precursor. And then in the 60s, you have all of these bands, the so-called British invasion bands like the Beatles and the Stones and the who are influenced by that and kind of kickstart this second wave of rock music that then becomes very enduring and very popular and sort of goes through to the present day. But the late 60s is really the important period in rock music, which is what the era that I did my my thesis on.
Right.
And that's when it sort of starts to happen, really.
Well, you know when Stuart, I mean, sometimes I'll say two random words like pigeon dance, and they'll be like, sounds like a progressive rock band from the whatever. What is progressive
Standard
rock?
joke.
Okay, so progressive rock is...
We should technically play a game as
It's
well.
whatever Rick Wakeman plays the keyboard for.
Absolutely. So progressive rock is kind of more self-consciously artsy rock.
Okay.
It's the idea that
The Bob Ross of rock.
it takes from, well...
It's like sort of painting.
I mean, I guess, in a way, in a manner of speaking, you could go down that route. But yeah, progressive rock, again, is a pretty broad church, but it's normally people who consider themselves quote unquote proper musicians. So, you know, rock and roll, when it started, you didn't have to be a great muso to play rock and roll. That was part of the appeal of it, is that it's very accessible. You can pick up a guitar, thrash out 3 chords fairly quickly, and congratulations, you've started a rock band. With progressive rock, you had a bunch of guys, usually who went to grammar schools in the 1960s, who had a background in quote-unquote proper music, so had a formal musical education, and, you know, could normally actually understood musical theory and could play instruments, and wanted to take this to the next level. So I started writing more complicated songs that derived from sort of classical music with more complicated structures, and they got longer, and they were very much about serious musicianship, while at the same time dressing up as wizards and daffodils.
Yeah, that's right.
Because they were a bunch of, you know, grammar school teenage boys.
Okay.
So it's like we love serious music, but also Lord of the Rings. And it's that thing of, what if we combine the two into this unholy mess?
Do you know of Genesis in the days before Phil Collins, when it was Peter Gabriel and that?
I know of Peter Gabriel.
Yeah.
They have these crazy stage shows, like
songs.
he transforms into a slipper man and all things like this.
Well, literally a shoe
weird
people character.
Pretty much, it's just like loads of blobs everywhere.
Really?
If I remember.
Yeah.
Wow,
So
it's proper weird.
A lot of spectacle on
Yeah.
stage.
There was a lot of this. You could do this in the 70s, and people were like, "Yeah, it's good." Buy that.
I'm sure I
We're
heard
on
something
board.
about like the actual LPs. Sometimes they go really crazy with that, wouldn't they? The way
Big time.
like different
yeah.
shape
So
ones and
prog
stuff.
rock are the ones where quite often the artwork looks like a Psygnosis game from the Amiga, or the same artist.
Roger Dean, who painted the Psygnosis covers, is also the cover artist for Yes, which is Rick Wakeman's band.
Okay.
So, yeah, but there was a lot of high concept, self-important stuff. So you'd get these very long albums, usually with a story attached to them and all of the artwork and everything else. The 70s was an era for that. Yeah. You could do that, and there was a market for it, for all of this kind of weird stuff. Because there was all the counterculture and alternative thinking, and people really buying into the idea of like crazy.
The thing with progressive rock bands, like you could say a random word now.
Chainsaw.
Asbestos.
Yeah.
That's a progressive rock band.
That sounds a bit more hard rock to me.
yeah.
Chainsaw Asbestos.
Chainsaw Asbestos. Featuring Flow Rider. Chepstow. Amazing. I've got a quiz for you, actually.
Ooh, come on, then.
With your knowledge of music. I thought I'd keep my sort of soft rock appeal and put together 5 songs.
Right.
All by the Scorpions.
Yeah. I've taken the lyrics of them, put them through a Stephen Hawking voice interpreter kind of. Other ones are available. Don't think is this voice copyright?
But his voice is called Perfect Paul, is it?
Is it?
Yeah, it's a really old one, but obviously it became iconic for him. So
okay. Yeah. This wasn't him. I could change the pitch and stuff like that.
Right.
But this is well known. I googled rock.
Okay.
So this is classed as rock.
So this says made in Great Yarmouth.
Yeah. So, you know, if you want to be my lover, you know, Spice Girls Wannabe might be on there. That's what I'm
Right.
saying.
Okay.
Right. Okay.
Does that mean it is on there? Was that like a preemptive clue?
No. It's just very loose rock.
Okay.
It's not going to be like your thrash, like but Bat's head off Rock.
Yeah, okay.
That's what they do, isn't it? That's what rock stars do, bite Bat's heads off.
Not
Just
all
Aussie
of
the
them.
once.
Aussie.
By accident, I believe.
It's not a very good diet, is it?
It's not a prerequisite. It's not like you yeah.
Not since Flow Rider brought in the
Well, see,
1937
he just
act.
bites Welsh cakes now. We haven't covered that.
Oh, I bitten the head off this Welsh cake. It was proper lush.
Proper like a glass sev on stage. I am. Okay, you ready for the first one?
Go on.
It's just
let's
the
do
lyrics,
it.
so
Okay.
I couldn't afford the music.
You know that chick that used to dance a lot every night? She'd be on the floor, checking what she got.
It's The Boys Back in Town by Thin Lizzy.
Yes.
Oh,
Did
very
you get
good.
that?
I know the song, but I wouldn't. It would take me ages to have worked it out.
I can't remember the lyrics, but that
If
chick that
ever.
used to dance a lot
Yeah,
every night,
yeah.
she'd be on the... Yeah. Okay.
When I tell you she was cool, she was red hot. She was red
Man,
hot.
she was
steaming. Yeah.
Don't know the song. Okay. Second one.
She's got eyes of the blue skies as if they thought of rain. I hate to look into those eyes and see an ounce of pain. Her hair reminds me of warm, safe place where as a child I'd hide and pray for the thunder and the rain to quietly pass me by.
Whoa, sweet child of mine.
I never would have got these. I know the songs,
didn't get that?
but no, bloody hell.
Can you remember that? Can you recite the lyrics as it goes?
What, for the whole song?
Yes.
Um,
Doctor of Rock.
Doctor Lyric
I'm
remembering.
trying to think. Yeah, I probably could. do,
Okay.
but
You ready?
She's got eyes of the blue skies as if they thought of rain. I hate to
to
look into those eyes and see an ounce of pain.
Her hair reminds me of a warm, safe place where as a child I'd hide and wait for the thunder and the rain to quietly pass me by. Oh, well, oh, sweet child of mine.
That's so good.
Oh, sweet child of mine.
Nice.
Ooh, sweet child of mine. Ooh, yeah. Ooh, sweet child of
It's
mine.
really convincing. Yeah. You really love that child.
I love that bit where Slash says guitar solo.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just looks at the camera.
Yeah. Guitar solo.
Oh, I'll have to reveal what I've put that as on my phone after this one. Ready? Number 3.
Has someone taken your faith? It's real. The pen you feel you trust, you must confess.
Is someone getting the best, the best, the best, the best,
Yes.
the best, the best,
Oh,
the
I
best,
don't know that
the
one.
best of you?
Yes. I put
By the Foo
Foo
Fighters.
Yeah.
By the Foo
I
Fitters.
put the Foo Fighters. rather than Foo.
I need a Foo Fitted.
You don't get fitter than a Foo Fit.
They're the boys to trust.
What's that? Quick Fit, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Wow. Are they still about? Yeah, they are.
Oh, yeah.
Very good MOTs. Hashtag spawn. Okay, number 4.
So can't you see me standing here? I got my back against the record machine.
So he's back against the
Okay.
record machine. Oh, hang on. Yeah, I go
You
again.
got it? You
Go
got it?
again. Go on.
So can't you see me standing here? I got my back against the
I
record
see
machine.
here's some back
Don't you
against
know
the
what I
record
mean?
machine. Yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah.
Yeah.
Better jump.
Van Halen.
Yeah. Van Halen, Jump. Yeah. Oh, you got married to that song?
Did you?
No.
I'm bitterly disappointed by that.
Just everyone jumped as we
I was just-
did our vows. Jump. Even the vicar, he was well in there.
The guy-
rider on the piano.
Vicar in his David Lee Ross spandex, just high kicking.
Tragically, Grandad was near the window at the time.
Yeah, that's it. Okay, last one.
Your lado, an albino, a mosquito,
Oh,
my libido.
Smells like Teen Spirit.
yeah.
Hey.
That was it. It was worth it just for that.
It's a bit at the end where he goes, yeah, and then hey.
Your lado, an albino, a mosquito, my libido, yeah. Hey.
Hey.
That's a bit Joey from Friends, isn't it?
Isn't it?
Hey, how you doing?
There you go. I think you got 5 out of 5 there.
Yeah.
I didn't get
Smashed
half
it.
of them right. And then right in front of me.
That's what a doctorate in rock music will get.
That
you.
is.
Bloody hell.
Wow.
Lyric recognition. I'm amazed that I did, because so when I am not doctoring in rock and writing about rock music, I sing in a rock band, and I am truly terrible at lyric remembrance and recognition.
But you have a very good voice, don't you?
I get by.
Could you recite anything?
Theoretically.
Sing us
Well,
a shopping
just-
list.
So, yes.
I mean, theoretically.
So you're Flow Rider. You've gone into your local Tesco Express in Chepstow, but we don't want Flow Rider. He's got his Welsh friend Daffyd, who's
Right.
actually or you,
Or just me.
who's actually
You are
Drop the veil.
Yeah, yeah,
you are
yeah.
spinning a yarn here.
yeah. So you're Flow Rider's best mate,
Okay.
and you've gone over to Chepstow,
Right.
and he's like, "Hey, can you sing my shopping list for me? I've forgotten it."
Right. Okay.
Is that right? Is that what you wanted? A shopping list?
Yeah, that's plenty good. Ham and eggs, bit of cheese.
Okay.
So, maybe some bin bags.
Yeah, and some corn mince.
Okay.
Specific.
Corn mince. Corn mince.
Yeah.
Okay, hang on. I'm going to have to turn this down, because otherwise I'm just going to blow this microphone.
Oh, right.
I'm not, as in the volume, not going to.
Damn. Everyone switches to the video version of the podcast. I was disappointed.
Yeah, just trying to get the video viewers up. Okay, right, let's give this a go then. So it was ham and eggs.
Oh, should we actually?
bags.
Yeah, I was going to say type out a whole list.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. It was ham and eggs.
Right, any guys?
Add to the shopping list, folks.
Gherkins.
Gherkins, yeah.
Actually, you got a bad memory. You've just admitted this.
Okay.
Gherkins, bin bags, corn mince.
Literally just waved to
Corn
Mr.
mince.
Biffo because I saw Mr. Biffo, even though everyone's going to be like, what was that? The mystery way.
Yeah, yeah.
Ham and eggs, corn mince, gherkins and beanbags if they are on offer.
Wow. That's amazing.
Rick Wakeman's
There you
calling.
go.
He's got a plan.
Okay, what about like if you were voiced at a checkout, like unexpected item in baggage area or something like that?
Unexpected item in a bagging area. We gotta clean up on aisle day.
The problem with that is Poundland will probably do that in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, that's
They've
right.
had Elvis, they've had Father Christmas, something else, and doing the voices of their things. Yeah.
Yeah.
Expect a call.
Oh,
Can it be uplifting though? I wonder if you could say something quite sad that would be like rock could make it be. Oh, I feel better now. You know how they use Geordies in call centres.
Your dog is dying.
Your dog is dying.
I'm sorry that your uncle died. I hear the funeral was surprisingly uplifting.
That is early
Catering
Genesis.
was great, but he's still dead. You'll remember tomorrow.
Oh my gosh.
Next week on Exploring Grief with Alec Plowman.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant.
Oh, no. So going back to the live music stuff.
Yeah.
How genuine are these live music albums, or are they entirely manufactured?
Press play.
It really depends. Because some of the most famous ones from the 70s are quite manufactured. So it really depends on the artist. But there is a lot of trickery that goes on there and a lot of really weird and wonderful things that people have done over the years to create a quote-unquote live album. So you go from, there are some live albums like Deep Purple's Made in Japan, which is pretty much all live. That's all.
Did they
that's
make it
made
in
up.
Japan?
They did make it in Japan, yeah.
Good.
In purple.
That's something.
It is, yeah.
Wearing purple. Only allowed to eat purple quality street.
That was
it.
They took the band name very literally.
They're all like Ribena characters.
Somebody comes in violet. It's like, get the hell out. Does it say violet purple? It says deep purple. It says deep purple, Ian. Fuck off.
You light a shade.
What have you done?
So I put 2 items in the wash.
Can I come in? No.
It's fading, mate. It's fading. Look, we give you a weekly allowance to go out and buy deep purple clothes. If it's not deep purple, then it's not deep purple. Just get in the van. Get in the van. Give David Coverdale a call. Coverdale will come in. Look at that. Look how deep Coverdale's purple is. Gillen, what are you doing, you violet pods?
Get the Pantone chart. Get the Pantone chart. I want this sorted.
I don't even understand what we're talking about. I find it funny.
So this week's band meeting, we're debating how deep is the requisite level of purple. We have our B&Q colour charts ready to go. Yeah, Deep Purple's Made in Japan is pretty much live. Like there's very little in the way of edits and overdubs there. But then you get to something like Kiss is Alive, which...
Massive tongue.
Yeah.
Genius. Gene.
I thought it was a request.
Yeah.
That's like a follow-up album. He's got a massive tongue, hasn't he, the guy from Kiss? I remember that.
Yeah, famously so. But Kiss is Alive is barely alive at all. They overdubbed most of the instruments there, redid all of the vocals, most of the instrumentation.
Next, you'll be telling me their faces aren't really weird white and black concoctions.
Well, I hate to break it to you.
No!
Such a thing as grease paint, Stuart.
No,
Don't know
I
if you
refuse to
know.
believe this.
Grease
I will not
paint,
accept
is that quite niche? I've never heard of grease paint before.
Yeah,
That's
yes.
what you use to do like kabuki faces.
Oh, because does it
Yeah.
stay on longer or
Very
something?
thick theatrical.
Yeah.
sort
Ah,
of
right.
paint,
So it's
yeah.
like semi-tar sort of
Yeah.
thing. Yeah, right.
Well, I mean, no.
No, I'm going to draw a line just under tar.
Yeah.
I found his mark in the road. So you're calling.
Same stuff they do the white markings
Yeah,
with.
that's it.
Yeah, leave that a minute, Steve. We've got to do G's face again. We're on again in half an hour. Second set starts, mate. It's come off, haven't it? It's come off. You didn't do it
Handle
right,
his
Dave.
flesh.
That's why there's always so much roadworks with nothing going on. They're
Yeah.
just following Kiss around, waiting to do their makeup, reapply it.
Yeah, so Kiss Is Alive is like famously overdubbed, and they did all kinds of crazy tricks on there. Like the crowd noise is taken from about 4 different gigs, so they layered up the crowd noise to make the crowd sound louder.
Right.
So you've got that. And then there's Thin Lizzy's Live and Dangerous, where the claim on that is that only the drums are live because everybody else re-recorded their part. Although I've subsequently heard that not even the drums are live and that it's essentially just a studio album and they overdubbed everything.
Even the audience going, "Way!"
Yeah, it's crowd noise from different gigs. They copy and paste
So this
it
is on the
into-
CD when
That's
you're playing
amazing.
it for that live sound. But when they're doing live on stage, it's obviously...
Yeah, well, I mean, back in the day, yes. These days, the line is blurred a bit. So Kiss, for example, currently on their farewell tour. And there's been a lot of controversy because Paul Stanley, the Kiss frontman, is supposedly miming to a pre-recorded backing track. So he has gone into the studio and recorded quote-unquote live vocals and is miming along to them because his throat is shot. After years of singing and over-singing and going for it, and he's 70 years old now. He's or thereabouts. He's completely shredded his voice and he can't do a 2-hour show. So his voice is on a tape, and there's been a lot of controversy about that.
Yeah.
Reminds me, what was the big scandal in the 80s? Was it Milli Vanilli?
Milli Vanilli, yeah. Well, I mean, it's a difficult one because with live albums, it's kind of... I've sort of become sympathetic to bands that do fixes and overdubs and things on live albums.
Is it easy to spot? I mean, I saw Britney Spears live, and she mimed, and I was really disappointed.
Well, it depends.
And that wasn't rock, let me tell you.
You seem genuinely surprised.
I mean, it was disappointing. I paid £100 for them tickets for me and
Bloody
my
hell.
ex-girlfriend.
Oh, as a result of
Juicy.
the... was your ex-girlfriend Britney Spears? You dumped her because she didn't sing live?
Yeah, that's it. I can't believe you've done this to me.
Yeah. I'm going home with Flow Rider.
I'm
He's
going
giving me a
out with
lift.
John. Yeah, Elton John.
I believed in you.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like, so, like, it depends on how well you do it. Like on albums, it's often seamless if you're really good at
because it is a
recording
skill.
and
It
mixing.
really must be to imagine like cartoons. I've seen how they do those.
Yeah.
And they're like trying to match. Or
Yeah.
is that they actually with Mrs. Doubtfire, the scene where he's trying to do the voice to the cartoon?
Yeah.
Is that actually real?
Normally they record the voice
Mrs.
first,
Doubtfire
the
is
car-
not.
Yeah, they
but,
should do that. But
yeah.
Mrs. Doubtfire, he's
Yeah, that
literally
kind
trying
of
to sing
system,
that
yeah.
up.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah, I mean, that happens at any ADR, additional dialogue recording.
Yeah.
At Game Child, we had to go into a studio, there's a few lines which are indistinct, and literally you see it on a screen, and they cue you in. And
So you've
you repeat
really
the
got to
line.
nail that. Otherwise, you're like a Chinese dub
I've-
film. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
The Wayne's World show.
done it myself doing live recordings because I play in a band, as I said, and we've done a couple of live things now since I did the PhD. And it's that thing where I've become a bit more sympathetic to it once I've actually made live recordings myself and you understand the reality of what live recording is. Because some of it, people are doing these overdubs on albums and things because you want to make it to sound perfect. You can get away with it not sounding perfect when you do it live because you blast it out on a massive PA at 1,000 watts. And also everybody just hears it the once. You hear it the once and somebody makes a mistake and you forget about it and you move on. But when you're listening to it on an album, you listen to it over and over again. And every time you hear it, you notice that mistake and it gets more and more annoying. So I'd always thought, well, you have to do this for authenticity. You have to keep it real, as it were. But then having actually done my own live recordings, what you realize is live recording is really difficult and it's really difficult to get everything to go right because often you have problems with the recording, you have problems on the day that are beyond your control, problems with how things sound, and you end up having to fix things out of necessity rather than choice, either because the vocal didn't record loud enough. Or, for example, we once had a problem where a guitar cut out. There was a problem with the amp, and the amp packed in during the second song, and we lost takes from that. And it's that thing of you could leave that in because that's what actually happened, and that was live. But to the person who is listening to it, that isn't necessarily conveyed because they can't see it happening. So they're listening to it and they think, oh, that's a dodgy recording, that is. So you end up putting the guitar back in because you want to fix it for the sake of like listening continuity.
But Barshens is recorded live. We just sit here afterwards.
Yeah, and
'cause we
repeat
do it over
everything.
Skype and then we just
Yeah.
talk.
Yeah. Well, I just do both of your voices. Like,
Just
whoever
dub it
comes
like
in,
that.
I just,
Are there any sort of, in the world of rock, obviously like some of these legendary stories, are there any that you've stumbled upon that you've been like, oh, that's funny?
Like, there's quite a few. Like,
It's
as
like
far
that
as
bat's biting the head off. I mean, that's not funny. That's
just animal cruelty.
Yeah. Damn. I think it was that video idea.
You get so many of these kind of weird anecdotes and things. There have been all kinds of stuff written about that. You must know the story of the Van Halen.
That jump, we just played a song.
Yeah.
Well, not the song.
Van Halen had the story, and this is where the joke in Wayne's World comes from, about brown M&Ms. So,
Del Preston, please put Del Preston in your movie, Stu.
Yeah. So
I had to beat them to death with their own shoes.
A bloody great Bengal tiger. The story with Van Halen was that in the 80s, they had a rider, which is what bands have backstage.
Flow rider.
Oh, no. I was waiting for that. Yes.
I come to out by Fred David, I have.
I got to miss sweet.
Need some help with his warm-ups. So Van Halen have a rider, which is a list of requirements that bands have when they do a gig, and like your backstage requirements, basically the things that you want in your dressing room.
Mariah Carey, for example, is a notorious diva, isn't she? In that way, like, I want shoes, or something like that,
or a peacock, or whatever. Bottle of
peacock that shards glitter.
Yeah, exactly. Usual
pretty standard stuff.
Yeah. So Van Halen had on their rider a stipulation that they wanted a bowl of M&Ms in their dressing room with all of the brown M&Ms removed.
Wow.
And
But was this just to see if anybody was reading them?
It was exactly for that reason. Because at the time, everybody was like, oh, this is egotistical rock star behavior. But what had happened was that in the Van Halen early days, the rider didn't just cover their backstage requirements, but also their technical specifications and the things that they needed in the venue. And they had a couple of instances where their road crew had been injured because...
By a brown M&M.
Well, because... Yeah.
Always a brown one.
It's weird. It's always, yeah. But they had technical specifications that weren't followed, and their guys would then go and set up and end up injuring themselves because things weren't laid out as they'd been specified. So the idea was that if the brown M&Ms weren't in the bowl, they knew they'd read the rider properly. If the brown M&Ms were in the bowl, then they would say, stop everything. We're not going any further until our guys do a full check of all the specifications.
Oh, wow.
Because
that's smart.
Yeah. So it was one of those things where they knew if people were paying attention. So
is that where that line came from in Wayne's World?
Yeah,
to get 1,000.
It's based on the Van Halen story.
Wow.
Yeah.
We've never done that with Barshens.
Mainly because we've got nobody to even give a list to, let alone...
Who would take those requests?
Just do it ourselves. Yeah. God. So I now need you, I'm afraid, to perform for the audience and tell us what is possibly one of my favourite ever anecdotes I've heard from anyone, which is your coffee habits at university.
Oh, okay. Sure, we can go down that
You will
route.
love this, Barry.
Okay.
So when I went to university at the tender age of 18 with a very innocent and unpolluted mind and not much knowing of the world, I'd only just...
A Nigerian prince emailed me.
Oh, yeah.
What are these trains?
It's like a cloud.
Steel horses?
Yeah, so I went to university not... that's when I started drinking coffee, was just before I went to university, maybe the year before. So I didn't know very much about caffeinated beverages. And in our university, in the food bit in the canteen, they had these coffee machines that were self-serve. And I somewhat naively I didn't know what an espresso was, and I assumed that was just black coffee. And I thought, these machines are rubbish, because every time I go up to them, it only gives me a dribble of coffee. Rubbish, broken machine. So for about 2 months, I would go twice a day.
That's far longer than I thought.
And top up.
2 months?
Yeah, seven espresso shots into a mug. And I would drink that in the morning and then in the afternoon. And then, of course, about
that's 14 shots of espresso a day.
A couple of weeks into this, I start getting palpitations.
I've not slept.
And I've not slept for days, and I'm in a real state, and I'm getting tremors and shakes, just random twitches and things, and having a problem. And so I'm a couple of weeks into this or whatever it is. I say a couple of months. It must have been a couple of weeks because otherwise I would have died.
It is.
And I go out with a friend to a cafe, and I order an espresso. And this little thing comes, and it's quite a fancy cafe. So I go, God, they're probably stingy in here, mate. This is ridiculous. And he goes, you know what that is? Oh, it's a coffee. He goes, it's an espresso. It's a concentrated shot of caffeine. I went, oh. And had this explains everything. And then had to spend about 3 months weaning myself off caffeine.
Wow. Yeah, it was a slow come down.
Yeah, because I couldn't go for like more than an hour without a caffeinated drink because I was completely tweaked.
You must have been wired.
Yeah, I really wasn't like I was, in a proper state.
Did you do all your essays in the first 3 months and take the rest of the year off?
Yeah, like it was, I just sat there, shading my essays till like 4 o'clock in the morning. Like, yes, knowledge is mine.
Wow.
Yeah.
On the subject of food and drink, you have a unique diet, and can we talk about that a little bit?
We could talk about,
because sometimes I see you in the corner of Barshens foraging on some meat, and some food. Banter,
that kind of show. I was going to say they don't call me cheeseboard for nothing, but I don't know what the connotations.
Yeah, that's it. You absolutely can't.
We'll leave that one out.
Yeah, so cheese. You can't.
I can't eat cheese. I'm dairy and gluten intolerant. I found out about 3 years ago now.
God, it's been that long, isn't it?
Because your diet, I think Stuart told me, used to be quite different, didn't it?
Yeah. So I just used to. Well, I went through a couple of dietary phases. So I, for many years I ate basically everything, and then I was a vegetarian for about 5 years.
Out of choice, or
out of choice, and then I stopped doing that, and then, and I had various like just general health things like eczema and headaches and stuff like that, and just generally
caffeine overdoses.
Yeah. Well, this was post caffeine.
Yeah,
so when I could no longer put it down to my rampant abuse of caffeinated beverages, it was like, okay, I've got something's kind of up here, and my partner said to me, well, why don't you try going on like a gluten-free diet? This could be like a dietary intolerance. And I was like, well, I guess I've kind of exhausted all of these various things and haven't worked out anything else. So I did that, and then had this great kind of revelation where after about 3 days where it was like coming off drugs and I was a miserable shit to everybody and just like having these massive kind of food crashes and just having to walk around with a pocket of ham in my pocket everywhere, a pack of ham in my pocket.
Really?
Everywhere. Yeah, because it's like after an hour I'd be like, I have no energy, I'm so hungry, everything's going wrong. Needed. Yeah, it's just like I got to the point where it's like, okay, so it looks like I have this intolerance to gluten. So it's not celiac disease, which is what I thought initially,
right?
Which is properly serious, but there is a definite intolerance there. Having spoken to doctors and things, I've been advised not to eat gluten. But I had these like ridiculous changes in, and the same with dairy, which I found out later as well. But then like ridiculous changes in just things that started happening that it was like, oh, I didn't even realize this was a thing that I had, like really bad snoring that then went away, and being able to breathe properly through my nose, which I'd never been able to do.
Well, it was making you bunged up or something.
Well, that I think was the dairy, because that has quite an impact
cheese just
on
sits
your
there.
site. Yeah.
Wow.
Well, cheese nose.
Oh, cheese nose.
Yeah.
That's it. Cheese board, that cheese nose. Flow right there.
And then, in the space of about 3 months, I lost 17 kilos, I think, just because I've just been like, all this
water retention and
awfulness. So it had a completely transformative effect on me, and now I just eat like spinach and chicken, and that's my entire diet.
Just chicken?
No, I eat,
just mainly meat and spinach and easy.
And carbs in the form of rice and potatoes and things, but no. Pasta and bread and things I avoid. I went through a period of eating all the gluten-free substitutes, because that's the first thing you do when you can't eat gluten. You just go, I'll have the gluten-free
and that
substitutes.
Didn't help?
Well, they taste really great, but what you discover is that there is so much sugar and crap in them to make them taste like the actual thing.
Oh, right.
That you then they're not great for you in the long run anyway. So So as a result, I kind of do what I'm going to call like lazy man's paleo, which is like non-committal paleo diet, because I just can't eat most of the carbs anyway. So it's lower carbs, higher in greens and meat. And
just
fish
literally meat and greens all the time.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I often wonder what's in that little box that you're like nibbling on. Nobody ever sees the box.
Yeah.
It's full of chicken, Barry.
It's my treasures. Or coins. Coins, you're going to take the coin star.
Just eating rocks.
Yeah. Wow.
Doctor of rocks.
Yeah. We've got 3 questions that we always ask people. Which you're probably aware of.
I'm vaguely aware.
Yes.
Am I surprised you to know, Barry, that I am vaguely aware of the format of Barsh?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, because you're always behind me.
Yeah.
Well, I can't remember them. Who's the most famous person you've ever met? Because you meet a lot of famous people through your job, don't you?
Yeah, well, doing rock music journalism, I've met various rock musicians, some of the people we've mentioned already. So Rick Wakeman.
Wasn't that who Eli nearly shot at himself on a car on a road trip to see, wasn't it?
We've got
a lot of Rick Wakeman stories come out in this podcast.
To get him to come on.
I've got some weird, because also Duff McKagan, who was Eli's most famous person he's ever met. Well, he had Slash and Duff from Guns N' Roses.
That's
well,
right.
I've met Duff McKagan broke my dictaphone is the story that I like to tell.
I'm glad you added the tophone.
Yeah.
Because that
So-
yeah.
Yeah.
mm,
So Duff McKagan
I was there then. Broke my dick.
yeah.
Tough phone.
So Duff McKagan is the bass player in Guns N' Roses. And years ago, I interviewed him when he was on tour with his solo band. He's a super nice guy. Duff McKagan really is a top bloke. But I went in, I had a dictaphone that I was recording this on, and he grabbed it. It was Halloween, so he grabbed it and started messing around and doing like zombie noises and things. And in the process of doing that, he put it next to his coffee machine, and the coffee machine was so loud that it blew the microphone on the dictaphone. So then I got home and it was this is just like, it's like I can hear the interview over all of this static and kind of corruption and everything else that come up in it.
That is a real rock star's coffee machine, isn't it?
Yeah.
It blows
My
the
rock
microphone.
machine is so loud. It goes up to 11.
Yeah, blows the microphone like dick to fader.
It was a proper
Dictafader.
Well,
That's something from the 80s. Buck Rogers, maybe?
it was a properly rubbish dictaphone, so it couldn't stand up to much abuse. I bought it for like 20 quid off of Amazon. But yeah, it is yeah. But that notwithstanding, he's a really nice bloke.
Okay.
I got on very, and sort of like after I did the interview, so I was a student journalist at this time, and I'm like, Guns N' Roses are one of my all-time favorite bands. So it's like, well, here's one of my musical heroes, and I'm doing an interview with him, and he was super chill on his tour bus, and yeah, like afterwards, you finish the interview, you've been talking to him for about an hour or whatever, and he turns around and he goes, so what do you do? What's it like living in Norwich? And then had like a 10-minute conversation about what it was like being a student in Norwich and university life. So he's like just
that's pretty
super,
cool. Yeah,
engaged.
Yeah. Is there anyone that you've met that's like been a little bit eccentric or weird, or like with like the flip reverse of that? Like,
Could you tell us if so?
I've been really lucky.
Flowrider.
I've been really lucky with that, because most of the people I've met in the context of meeting them, I do mostly guitar journalism. So I think people
means I write with my guitar.
Yeah.
I don't type.
tell the stories with the strings.
Do the tapping.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming out. Keeping the dream alive.
Keeping the dream. Making it real. Play guitar for the people. Yeah. So yeah, I do like mostly guitar journalism, and I think people tend to be, because you have that commonality and because most of what you want to talk about is related to that, I think people tend to be less standoffish than they are with normal music journalists, because it feels less like you're trying to get a scoop and more like here is somebody with a similar passion who wants to talk about those interests and isn't going to try and dig for dirt. So generally my people are really nice and easy to get on with. I've not really had a bad experience with a rock musician. You have some people who are just a bit kind of cool and you don't have that engagement with, and that's fine, but I've never had like a bad experience. I did once interview, do you remember Lady Sovereign? She was
names from
Chepstow, I think.
Yeah.
Lady Chepstow from Sovereign.
Flowriders, mate. Lady Sovereign. No, I once interviewed her, and she was a bit weird.
Sovereign,
she had like her moment back in the mid 2000s. She used to go out with Preston from the Ordinary Boys.
He's the one who...
He's in Big Brother.
Buzzcocks, isn't he?
That's right.
Oh my God! Because she wrote. Wasn't she the one who wrote the book, or was that a different?
No, I've made that up. She didn't go out with him. She did a collaboration with them. He went out with someone from Big Brother or something. I'm just talking bollocks, basically.
Love Me or Hate Me was her biggest song.
Yeah. So she, I did an interview once with her, back when she was a thing, and that was a bit weird. She was a bit. I think there was just a culture clash there, because she was kind of like grime and rap, and I was there like, yeah, you like Aerosmith? It was kind of like I didn't really have a...
She looks a bit like Mel C.
Yeah, I would have thought that was Mel C. I genuinely wouldn't have.
But she we had quite an interesting interview in the end, and some stuff that I just cut at the time because I'm like, she started talking to me about how she had visions and stuff like that, and I'm like, this is a bit weird. I can't tell if you're being serious or if
Is
you were
Visions
just
like an album she just bought or
yeah,
something?
I couldn't tell if she was like meant it or if she was just trying to troll me for the purpose of comedy, so I ended up leaving it out. But that was one of the weirder ones I've ever had. But
Right.
no proper dicks.
It says here that it says here that she's called Lady Sovereign because she sometimes takes coins to Coinstars.
And ones that are worth a lot of money. It just pops
she
in,
puts
gets
them
a
in.
quid for
Yeah,
it.
That's how she gets paid now. Yeah.
She's that anti-establishment.
Yeah,
that
she obviously likes sovereigns because she's kept a few on her fingers there, so that must be her thing. Ever been in a local newspaper?
Yeah. So I years ago was in a local newspaper because I was in a band that lost in the first heat of a Battle of the Bands, which is not much of an achievement.
Battle of the Bands is like more of a pimped up X Factor, isn't it?
Yeah,
Bit more like,
but I'd say less pimped up.
There's a lack of pimpage in that sense.
Yeah. So we went and did this Battle of the Bands, and we didn't get through the first heat. But at the time, a friend of mine was interning at a local newspaper, so he did us a write-up anyway, and was like did us a favourable write-up, and like, although they didn't win, they were clearly the crowd favourite on the night. And like, local band doesn't go through in Battle of Bands competition.
Oh no!
So it's kind of a weird article to have. Where it's like celebrating our greatest failure in print form.
But you're still in a band now and going strong.
I'm in a band called Monster City, Norwich-based hard rock band.
Have you ever seen them live, Stu?
I have several times.
Yeah.
Did you mosh?
Very good. I did a bit, but don't tell anyone.
Really? Did you really?
I can't remember.
Because they
Probably.
get pretty.
I have.
You sort of shuffled in a kind of a vaguely...
My penguin impression.
Is this moshing?
Is this what moshing is?
Am I doing it right, Alec? Alec?
I'm singing, Stuart.
Stuart. Shut up.
Do you want people moshing to your music?
Yeah,
You do?
ideally.
How do you instigate a mosh? I mean, could we do it now?
I don't know if we have sufficient. How many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
We've got a big room.
We need a
mics.
professional mosh
seven-man
instigator
mosh,
to...
The usual, like the way that the heavy band starts. Like,
All right, motherfuckers. Let me say fucking circle pit. Front to back. Come on.
Circle
do this.
pit.
Yeah, circle pit. And then generally, if people are into it, they'll be like, oh, I think he means he wants us to mosh.
Okay. Oh, please could you mosh, old chaps? We did that. Oh, much more polite.
We'll commence moshing in 3, 2, 1.
Yeah.
Marvellous.
It's like Morris dancing, isn't it? Yeah. Much more sophisticated.
Fala la, fala lee, fala la, fala mosh.
Is that one of those really hard ones where they do the circle? Was it armpit circle or something?
Circle pit.
Circle pit, yeah.
Armpit circle.
I don't know. It's the new thing. But they like run together and just like
Wall of Death.
Oh yeah, I've seen that.
Yeah,
that looks amazing. I don't want to do it.
Super
but...
dangerous. I once did Wall of Death on somebody's shoulders, which was
wow.
Yeah.
How are you alive?
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
When the caffeine runs out, it'll just collapse.
Yeah, all fired up on caffeine and gluten. I was like, let's do it.
Yeah. Well, what's the point? You sort of run at each other and then you're like, high five, and then like, yeah, music.
It's a weird thing. I think with the thing you find at heavy metal gigs, because you've got moshing going on, and you're like, oh, this seems super aggressive and everything.
I mean, it looks it.
Yeah, but
Not gonna
actually,
lie.
there's kind of a culture there of understanding, and it's just people are super nice, and everybody knows what they're doing, and everybody picks each other up, and there's an etiquette to moshing. It's not just going in and punching people.
You got to show me
If you do
this
that.
is one for the video.
Well, it's kind of it's really there's a lot of shoulder barging. You think about it like you're playing rugby.
Okay.
So if you go into you kind of lean into a tackle in rugby or whatever, you're not. You're going in with the intention of bumping into somebody, but you're not slapping them in the face.
Okay.
It's a kind of, it's an aggressive music, and it's kind of just an energy outlet, really.
Yeah, let it go.
Yeah, that metal staple there. Yeah.
But it's like, like by Frozen.
Go to
The Disney one.
Go to an Ina Mendel concert, and everybody's just
moshing away.
Circle pit.
She's really into it. Like,
You teenage motherfuckers. All right, let me see you. From the Disney movie Frozen, this is Let It Fucking Go. And I want to see you let it fucking go on this one, all right? Those devil horns in the air, motherfuckers. I want Walt Disney to fucking hear you. Spin it around. 8-year-old mosh pit. Come on. I want to see some fucking blood, all right?
yeah. Yeah. I meant our concerts are
We
fucking
now need
intense.
T-shirts to just say "Mosh" for Olaf.
Mosh for cheeseboard. Every time now, every Barshens always going to be thinking any silence going on, he'd be like, "Look at Mosh!
Yeah.
Come on, let's crank this up!" Oh my gosh! But I've seen people like lose their teeth in mosh pits and stuff.
Yeah, weirdest thing I ever saw in a mosh pit was a slip.
Someone putting their washing out.
A slip. This was you do. You see the people who commit like in full costume. You'll see somebody like just dressed as a dinosaur, like let's do this. It's like okay, cool.
Yeah, we'd be spotted from a mile away.
The weirdest thing I've ever seen in mosh pit was, you remember in Red Dwarf, you know the episode where Rimmer goes insane and dresses up in a gingham dress and
yes,
has a
Mr. Flibble.
Mr. Flibble puppet. I've seen somebody in a mosh pit in that full costume with the hologram on their head and the Mr. Flibble puppet just
It
going
could have
for
actually
it.
just been Chris Barry. He might have been lost.
Yeah,
He got lost on the way back from set. Better blend in.
This isn't Shepperton Studios at all.
But is that not like a red rag to a ball? Is he not like targeted and like tossed in the air?
People love it. People are, and like I said, it's pretty friendly once you get past the physical aggression.
Right.
Like weirdest thing I've ever seen in a mosh pit was at a Slipknot gig, and I saw a girl go into the mosh pit and come out with what looked like it was like her leg kind of looked like it had popped out somewhere, and I don't know if she was double jointed or something, but like it was properly nasty.
She is now.
And
She's got 3 arms now, girl.
her boyfriend turned around to her and was like, "We need to take you to the medical tent," and she was like, "No, pop it back in."
Oh.
And then he
Now that's
kind of
metal.
did that, and I don't know what she was on, but he did that, and then she jumped back into the pit, and I'm like, just doing a bit of sick in the corner because
Dancing with a like bone.
it's like, yeah. So you do get some intense stuff. I assume these people.
Was it a Boney M concert? Hey.
Well,
Banter.
I assume these people were on drugs, but worst audience I've ever had at a gig in terms of crowd aggression is an Oasis concert.
Really?
Yeah, because there's kind of this
Because
like
Blur turned up on stage by accident.
Well, they all stood there with their hands in their pockets like that.
Yeah. Well, it's like you get when you go to a heavy metal gig. When it comes to moshing, there are like rules. There are things that you can and can't do, and
No
people sort
kissing.
of understand.
No heavy petting.
Yeah.
No bombing.
No diving, no bombing.
Although, yeah, and then like Oasis gigs, just like football hooligans. It's like the roughest crowd I've ever seen.
Wow.
Like people properly beating the shit out of each other, really aggressive. Like the most scared I've ever been at a gig was in like front row of an Oasis concert.
Wow.
Yeah.
Blimey.
You touched on Slipknot just then.
Yeah.
Can you sing any Slipknot, or can you do a line? Because I cannot translate. I don't know what it is.
That kind of scream singing is really difficult.
Do you
to
understand the appeal of it?
Oh, absolutely.
I've never. You like that?
Yeah, I like that sort of music. Yeah, it's that kind of.
Like that.
Well, it's like there's a.
Sorry, I was just clearing my throat. That wasn't my impression.
Drains need cleaning again.
My name is Corey Taylor, and I'm the lead singer from Slipknot.
Oh, wasn't it supposed to be the guy from Nickelback?
The guy from Nickelback, Chad Kroger.
Yeah, wasn't it? He was like wearing a mask and he was all like, ooh. And the moment that would just been in the art. No? I thought it was like all this mystery. Who is the lead singer of Slipknot?
And it was Chad Kroger.
No, like that kind of singing, you have like there's special vocal coaches who teach you how to sing. There's a
Really?
lady
Just
called-
punch you in the throat.
There's a lady called Melissa Cross who teaches. She has a course called the Zen of Screaming, which is like teaching that kind of aggressive.
Oh, so you have to like be coached into it.
Yeah, to do it properly,
shred
because you
your
can really destroy
voice,
your
Wow.
throat. But it's
Do you like Slipknot? What's your sort of taste in rock?
I'm terrible with music. I just dip in and out of various
I was
songs.
going to say, what is your favourite type of genre? You like anything? Or?
Yeah, more sort of pop than rock, I
Yeah.
suppose, really.
Like,
except for Monster City, am I right?
He's
Not
right.
at his finest.
www.monstercity.co.uk. Is that right?
No, monstercityband.com.
Monstercityband.com. That's better.
Yeah.
Oh, well.
But have you ever heard Slipknot songs?
Yes, it's the shrieky man with the funny mask.
Can you understand a word they're saying?
No,
Can
not
you,
at all.
Is
Yeah,
there
I
actual
can.
lyrics,
Yeah,
or is it just
yeah.
like noise?
I quite like Corey Taylor's an interesting guy, the singer from Slipknot. He's written a bunch of books and things. He's quite an interesting chap. He has a band called Stone Sour, which is like his hard rock band, and he's got a proper singing voice and like a really great singing voice, and a great screaming voice as well. But his,
His singing's good, but you really should be screaming.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is, there's an art to a great screaming voice. You can hear people who are really bad screamers, and then you hear people who can really do it. Because it's a lot about kind of vocal support and things. It's really hard to do well, and he does it very well.
Right.
Yeah.
The Barshens Slipknot-esque album will be coming soon then.
Yeah, we're going to make our own masks and just shriek a lot. Yeah. We may have missed the point somewhat, but it'll be a thing to do.
60% of the way there. Yeah.
So you're on iTunes then?
We're on Bandcamp.
Bandcamp, isn't that
real.
American Pie?
Yeah, this one time on Bandcamp, I released my music for a reasonable price. I guess. Yeah.
I've not heard of that before.
Yeah,
Bandcamp. It's only available if you watch American Pie.
Yeah.
Okay.
We will be on iTunes eventually. We're recording an album at the moment, so
You've got to pay to be on iTunes.
No, there's certain ways of getting on there. It's you get some work. There are services you can do it through and stuff. But we will be eventually. But we're on YouTube and Facebook and all the social media stuff.
Yeah. And monstercityband.com.
What's the most embarrassing situation you've ever been in?
So, right, last time I was on here for the one that didn't happen.
I can't actually remember anything we talked about.
I told her.
Was there anything interesting?
No,
this was really interesting today.
Mostly bollocks, mate.
Just cheese.
Yeah.
We actually had a cheeseboard.
So there I told a really rubbish, embarrassing story about me being drunk at university that wasn't that embarrassing at all. And then on the train home from that session...
Oh, yes.
I had a recollection of what my actual embarrassing story was. So I will tell it now, because this is the real...
I feel like you're prepping us. Like, are you sitting comfortably?
So when I was I started my first paid rock journalism gig. With that paycheck, I decided I'm going to get something really meaningful. And by meaningful, I mean completely flippant and useless.
I just remembered this.
So I went out and I bought one of these big belt buckles, because being friends with rock people, everybody was into these big belt buckles that they had on.
What is it about a belt buckle?
Yeah, I don't know. Well, everybody else had them, and they had them for like bands and things. I knew people who
would
be
like a branded, like like the rock,
like
had like
Led
a big,
Zeppelin ones, and I knew people who had Batman ones and stuff like that.
Big ass.
Well, here's the thing, because they all have their band ones, and I'm like, I'm going to take this a step further. So I went on to a website, and I saw that they had, and this is a reference that's going to go way over your head, Barry.
Okay, they normally do. Yeah,
they had a Boba Fett belt buckle. Boba Fett is a character from Star Wars.
Yeah.
He's
the guy with the helmet, isn't he?
Yes. Yeah. The helmet plays a key role here. So it's
a grey helmet, that one, isn't it?
Greeny, green with sort of.
He flies. He's
got a jetpack.
I've seen a clip of him. Yeah.
Okay. So the belt buckle was Boba Fett's helmet. And I ordered this, and I was like, oh, that's going to be great. I'm going to show up all my nerdy rock friends by having a Boba Fett belt buckle. That's obscure enough. That's awesome. Now, I ordered this and I assumed that it was flat. You would have thought that a Boba Fett belt buckle would be flat, because it's a belt buckle. Why would it not be? Only it arrived, and firstly, it was made of pewter, so it was really heavy. And secondly, it was a 3D mold of the front of Boba Fett's helmet, the first half of it, that was about this big.
I need to just Google Boba Fett. Just
how big is that for the audio people?
I don't know. Probably about
10 centimeters?
Well, maybe, I don't know. Well, it was of enough of a size that it looked less like a belt buckle and more like a crotch ornament.
So it's like a proper with the wedge, the black bit in between as well.
Yeah, so I paid a considerable amount of money to have this shipped from America.
The ship from America, it probably weighs like...
Yeah. So I was like, and I got it, and I'm like, oh God, this is ridiculous.
Was it even a belt buckle?
I don't know.
It could have been a helmet.
Like maybe a ceramic mug or something.
Something your gran has on her wall, like with the plates. Yeah. It's my Boba Fett one.
But I'd committed to this, and I was like, wow, I spent so much money on this. I'm gonna wear it. So I walked around with this ridiculous crotch ornament on my trousers for a few weeks.
Did your trousers keep falling down due to the weight of it?
You would, because one day I was getting off the bus on Earlham Road in Norwich. So I stood up and I walked off the bus past a bunch of like mums with pushchairs and old ladies who were all looking at me in abject horror.
At your belt buckle?
Well,
is it like,
so one would assume.
That guy is cool.
I'm like, oh yeah, a lot of Empire Strikes Back fans on this. Yeah. So I'm perplexed by why all of these people are just kind of staring at me like that. So I just turned around to them and I went, hello, and walked off the bus, and I'm like, what's going on? And I'm like, I got off the bus and it's like, I don't know, it's a June day. So I'm like, oh, it's cold, isn't it? Why is this so cold?
In June, yeah.
Why is it so cold in June? And I looked down to discover that the weight of my Boba Fett belt buckle, as I had gotten off the bus, had pulled down the top part of my trousers and had also caught on my pants and pulled down the top part of my pants. So I had stood up and effectively exposed the top half of myself to a group of young mums and grannies while getting off the bus. All because of an incredibly
Crime Stoppers.
Yes.
Oh my God.
All because of an incredibly heavy Boba Fett belt buckle.
I've forgotten the end of that story. Oh, God.
Yeah. So
That's insane.
And now I just wish I could forget it.
yeah.
Oh.
So then I promptly took off the belt buckle, put it in a drawer, and have never seen it again since.
So you still have it at
It's
home,
still out there
say?
somewhere. I don't know
It's
where.
out there.
Yeah.
Strike again.
Yeah,
The legends were
yeah.
true.
You don't lose a Boba Fett belt buckle.
No, you
though.
don't.
It stays with you.
Have you ever seen anyone else wearing a Boba Fett?
No, not that one.
From your story, I think I'll avoid it
Yeah.
myself.
I do wonder if they just sent me like part of the prop mold or something like that,
Yeah.
like from the studio.
So would you say it was about the width of, for people
Well,
listening,
it
like
was-
they're one of these
yeah, it was
microphone muffs?
probably about as wide as this pop shit.
And the fact that it's not
God.
flat
And
either.
yeah,
it's
it came
actually
out to about here, and it was like 3D molded, and it was just like,
And exposed your Jeremy Bullocks.
Yeah, absolutely.
He's the actor. Oh, dear.
It's not the sort of thing he wears around his waist, is it, Boba Fett? It's not. He hasn't
No, he
got-
doesn't have his own
he doesn't have his own head on his dick.
like the ultimate Star Wars vanity.
Yeah, just in case you
Got
forgot.
Boba Fett
That's a
on Boba
Star
Fett.
Trek thing. Heads on dicks is Star Trek. Come on, Barry.
Heads on dicks. Right, well, thanks for coming along. I mean, you were
quite
here
right.
anyway.
It's not like I get to leave, is it?
I just like the idea of going forward every now and then. You can just like unleash and just like, let out any sort of rock sounds you want.
Yeah.
A little delicate ambience in the background.
Yeah, just
Is there anything else you want to promote? Where can people find you? Obviously, we've given your band some love in.
yeah. So I'm alecplowman.com is my website. I'm Alec_Plowman on Twitter. That's PLOWMAN. Spell it the American way for some reason, in spite of being Welsh. But there you go. And
Flow Rider.
yeah, national treasure. And MonsterCityBand.com is the music website if you like hard rock, and and Monster City on Monster City Band on Facebook and Twitter and all of that goodness.
MySpace. That used to be big for
I've
bands.
still got a MySpace.
Did you see?
I thought it shut down.
No, I've still got my
Still
profile.
going?
Yeah.
They just announced the other day that they had to admit that they've lost most of the music that was on there
Oh,
during
wow.
a server transfer. Like if your music was on there from more than 3 years ago, it's probably gone. And that was everybody's like.
Wow.
So a whole
Tom's still got a backup, surely.
you'd hope.
Behind his whiteboard. He just
what
flip it
that was,
over.
yeah.
He's
Everyone
got a
was
load of
friends.
old C90s
Yeah.
in there with everything recorded on.
Yeah, whole archive of like, unsigned music from the
Oh.
2000s has just disappeared because the servers, when they transferred over their server, they lost a load of data. Yeah,
Have you still got a MySpace profile? Because it still
I don't think
exists.
I ever
Yeah, mine
had a
does.
MySpace
I found it the other day.
one, no.
That's some homework for you listeners. Have a little and watches.
look up Barry's MySpace. Tell us what you think.
that's
And
right.
Barry's Habbo Hotel.
There's
and,
a cracking one of me wearing a Boba Fett belt.
Yeah.
On there. Yeah. Brilliant. Well, thanks a lot, guys. Thanks.
yes, thank you very much. And I look forward to getting my large pewter Alec Plowman head to wear as my Boba Fett costume in
Oh,
the
we need
future.
to get that. We need to get one of them made. We can each have belt buckles of our own faces.
Mortalized on a cock revealing belt buckle.
That's
Every
what I want on my
man's dream.
gravestone. Bye.
Bye.
Barshens